Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, March 4th. I think it's probably appropriate to say that at the end of Friday's stream I was exhausted mentally, so it kind of went totally over my head. The fact that Dead or Alive 6 has a $100 extra Season 1 pass. Like, I was looking at it more thinking, oh, this is your standard rip-off jobs. Still a rip-off, where you'd pay $100, you'd get the base game, and you'd get Season 1 pass. And maybe it's a Season 1 pass, but there would only be a Season 2 a year later. It's become more clear to me now that I've slept and thought about it that no, it's actually, I'm still not 100% sure if you buy the deluxe version of the game, you don't get the Season 1 pass. But if you buy the base game and the Season 1 pass, you're paying $170. The Season 1 pass includes 2 characters and about 50 costumes. That is incredibly expensive. That makes a lot more sense on that. Also, I kind of didn't say anything about Zinka Zero, or I believe is the name of that Japanese visual novel dungeon crawler game, being censored. I'm gonna hold off until we see that. I kind of just left it. It says the child bedroom scenes are being censored. I don't know what that means, frankly. It could mean that I know the characters are clones that age throughout the course of like a week, so there might be some scenes where they're young 10-year-olds in pajamas in a bedroom, and it might be completely like innocent, or it might be straight up just like moe underage hentai in the Japanese version, but I doubt it because they don't do that in games. They just don't in Japanese games because they'd get in trouble. So I'm waiting for kind of like a shot-for-shot comparison there. What else? I brought the chat back. It may not exactly be right. It's going to show the warning, I think, forever, but I think whatever anyone else types is going to pop up and disappear, and that's a mistake. It's pretty much a non-controversy, frankly. The whole, oh, people are putting comments on channels, and that is causing Adpocalypse 2.0. That kind of came and went, and we could rehash my thoughts that this was intentionally set up, and I wouldn't be surprised if they found the person who made the video on it was actually working for some advertising agency to try to cause an Adpocalypse 2.0 so that people like Disney could just renegotiate. I guess we need to play as a hunter today, so let's get into a game. It seems like YouTube is, at the moment, giving me the impression that they're just going to mute comments on videos. At first, they were talking about, like, they were going to take down channels or give community guideline strikes for what other people commented. I think they've just kind of silently backed off on that, because that would be incredibly unfair, and then that would just cause a rise of more people complaining about YouTube for no good reason. So, and frankly, the chat that happens on my YouTube channel is severely infrequent and extremely rarely inappropriate. Like, let's face it, the more inappropriate things that get said are said by me or by the game developers that I'm showing off, so I think I can kind of trust my audience for what little there is that actually chats. I did a little bit of recording over the weekend, but not a lot. mostly I did Star Wars Rebel Assaults, which is, I think it's called Rebel Assault 1 and 2, which are some old DOS. They're claimed to be on-rail shooters games. I would not really call them on-rail shooters games. I would call them closer to a slightly on-rails light gun game, because you're not 100% on rails. Like, it is not House of the Dead where you just get to maybe choose if you're going left or right. It's closer to a case of you're flying a spaceship, and if you lean the mouse to the left, you turn a little bit to the left, or you lean to the right, you turn to the right. Unfortunately, it is using the old style joystick setups where there's just kind of no dead zone in an Xbox One controller, or even I'd assume there's probably no dead zone in most controllers until you get to really, really expensive high tier controllers. So and I don't think it's the controller's fault as much as it's the programming. So you'll have to configure and center the controller for each of these DOS games, and a lot of times they don't save any settings, so you'd have to play the entire game in one run, which would be very doable for the Rebel Assault games. But the cursor will just start slowly jumping towards the top left for me, and so there's no way to really use a controller because it's moving all over the place, and it's far too sensitive. So you try to move the ship and it just crashes into this wall, and then it crashes into that wall, so it's basically unplayable. And so then I moved over to X-Wing, and the X-Wing Special Edition is a collection of like 3 games. In that there is the X-Wing Classic that you can launch, or the X-Wing CD-ROM collection, which has slightly better graphics, it seemed like, and more audio. Of course, any CD-ROM from floppy disk version would. And then on top of that, it seems it has more levels on the CD-ROM version, but otherwise it's still the same control problems where I just can't control the ship, and the joystick setup is definitely not equipping you to play with just a joystick. You're still going to have a keyboard in front of you to press buttons to adjust like the settings in X-Wing. And then I tried to play X-Wing Special Edition, and it crashed as soon as I tried to go into a level, and at that point I was just like, I do not care. Like, I honestly could not care less about this game to even try to do that. So yeah, I chose to just end the recording. And quite frankly, there's a lot of just really bad recordings I'm doing as I'm going through the 3 different versions of X-Wing. Next, I'm going to go into the 3 different versions of TIE Fighter, which hopefully is slightly better, but man, these are old Star Wars games, and I'm just kind of burning through all the Star Wars games for May the 4th be with you, and then I want to be done with Star Wars. That gives me back May as a month. What am I going to do with it? Kind of nothing. Like, let's be honest, my channel's not really trying to adopt more themes. I've always wanted to do like a second month focused on zombies, and I feel like maybe if I can get around to January or February of next year to have a secondary Halloween month, or particularly just zombie game month, because there's plenty of games out there that have zombies in them that aren't really that horrific or scary. But that's kind of the only theme month that I'm trying to add, and I'm still very iffy if I want to cover games that I got for free in November. Honestly, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to move games that I got for free in January. That I can see that being helpful. Hey, before we do this, I don't think it matters, but let's do that. Yeah, I have no more mana. Why did I attack the face? I don't know what I'm doing here. Hearthstone related, I listened to Disguised Toast cover the new expansion. He gave me a little bit more details than what I had picked up just from my own lack of research. It seems like the details are pretty certain that it is going to cost like 2,500 dust. So, because of that, I feel like we're going to be in a situation where when the next expansion comes out, I am not going to spend all of my gold on any of the expansions. So we're still gonna pretty much only open up maybe 25 packs, and because of the way they've changed the release here. So yeah, and sadly that's kind of the suggestion you have to give to everybody else, is to say, well, because of the way this is done, you kind of need to let's see. You kind of need to hold back in the next expansion and not waste all your money on packs. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win here. So yeah, that's gonna suck. I guess that puts us in a fine place to start covering the news. We have a lot of news left over from the weekend, which is fine. Like that seems to be the way that it's gonna go. I think it's only fair to also point out that YouTube, in part, had its streaming messed up earlier today, and I was gonna try and stream anyways, but there was a chance that this footage wouldn't stream at all, so
none can escape my fury.
So yeah, that's like I've complained about other services certainly, and pointed out that their services have gone down or had problems. This is the first time YouTube has had those kind of problems. YouTube is very good, frankly, about keeping mechanical problems to a minimum. For as big of a service as it is, it's just really terrible about policy problems. So let's I guess try to rush through all of this. I'm behind, I guess, in recording. Like I'm trying not to let that become the attitude that I adopt. I've been in that attitude too much over the past few years of just like, oh, I'm behind, I need to make more content, I need to make more content. But I am behind, sure. I should do more than what is the equivalent of 3 or 4 episodes, particularly when they're 30-minute episodes now. At most. Like, I should be making double the amount of episodes and content, but I'm not. I'm just giving myself, I think, more realistic goals instead of overworking myself like I was before.
Job's done.
So we have a game on Steam here called Maestro of Villa Mia Flora. This sounds like it is a Spanish game, and it looks like an RPG Maker game. English is not supported, 66%, and it's Italian. Okay, I was wrong about that.
Will offer you aid.
So I guess I'm not that good at identifying Italian. But yeah, if we could have a shorter stream, I say it every time, the more the better. There's a definite disconnect between the amount of ambition I have when I start streaming and the amount of energy I have by the time I'm done streaming. And a lot of that is doing the 3 accounts and just streaming for longer and longer. Unfortunately, that's the only thing that works with YouTube. 99% of my problems I think would be solved if the YouTube algorithm just gave pre-recorded footage a better shot. Like when something is scheduled to air today, promote that to people. And there's definitely a lot of a lack of that, certainly, because even when you go and search something, most of the time it's recommending something that's months old, years old. Like I typed in a Pink Floyd song into YouTube just the other day, and you would think that there's people doing Pink Floyd covers all the time, or that there would be a chance out there at least that somebody would do a good cover and it would be good or worth listening to, or at least it would be fresh and new, and so that some of those would be suggested. No, like the top 2 things are 12 and 13 years old, and all they are somebody who did a low effort, I'm gonna put a Photoshop slideshow over the song, and it's not even a Vimeo thing, so I guess nobody's content IDing Pink Floyd, or nobody cares. And yeah, so at least the first 3 links are the same 3 links I would have gotten a year ago. Which I know because I typed in the exact same song about a year ago, and so if you were to do a cover on Pink Floyd, you'd probably have to type in that song title and cover, and even then you probably still wouldn't show up in the top 10 results unless somebody goes in the filter and says filtered by newest. So it's practically impossible for anybody who's doing what is admittedly not the most in creative creation ever, but it's a real great example in my mind of how YouTube's algorithm just loves views so much so, and it loves watch time that's proven versus watch time that it is speculative. So when a new video comes out from anybody, YouTube can only guess as far as what the watch time on that new video is. So why would it promote that video when it could just say, well, we know a lot of people love to watch the 24-hour live stream of the tunes to study by, or any of those things, which are still around, but at least they got rid of the live trending tab because they realized that that was literally doing nothing for actual creators and just being abused. Let's see. Nightwolf's on the chat. He says hi. Hi, Nightwolf. Nightwolf, have you been on the chat before? You sound new. Well, hello. Either way, apologies if you have, and I just forgot. Let's see. Moving on. Gamatsu has an article. Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle Naoto. That's N-A-O-T-O. Kuragane Battle Trailer. So a new Blaze Blue game is out. It's a minute and 6 game. Like, seems like this is. There's going to be an arcade version, a PS4, Switch, and PC versions in the spring. Let's see. Why does this not? Oh, this does work. Just plain win. Nightwolf put a frowny face. I guess he has been on the chat before. Apologies. See, we need Druid and Hunter victories. I heard about some of the Hall of Fame nerf cards that are going away, and how Disguised Toast says that that's going to make it practically impossible to play Druid. Natural Eyes is one of the cards that's going into the Hall of Fame. And he, in Disguised Toast, explained that if you have the dust to craft something right now for 1600 dust, when it gets nerfed and put in the Hall of Fame, you'll get that, you'll get an amount of dust extra. So it is actually a really good idea to look up all of the games cards that are going to be nerfed and craft 2 copies of them. You shouldn't craft golden copies because it's a neutral effect. But yeah, there's at least 6 cards that are going into the Hall of Fame during the next when the next expansion comes out. So I should get some dust, and there is a better way that you could benefit from that if you're crafting cards that you really don't want to play with, particularly if you're not playing Wild. So you could craft a card, get the dust, and then decraft the card later on.
Time waits for no one.
Can't do anything, even though I have 2 extra mana right now. Let's see.
Not on my watch.
Nightwolf says, I even beat you in Hearthstone. Oh. Well, apologies, I slept since then.
For the wilds.
It's been a long week. I guess I shouldn't ask that question. That's me being socially awkward. You should probably never ask somebody, "Hey, are you new?"
Reporting for duty.
So yeah. So a new Blaze Blue game is coming out. Cross Tag Battle Naoto Kuragane. If you're, I'm still not really sure where the Blaze Blue game series falls in the ranks of fighting games. Seems like every time I take a step forward to thinking about, alright, I now understand the ways of fighting games, and which ones are the good ones and which ones are the ones not worth playing. A new wrench gets thrown in the works. moving on to what is, I suppose, the continuing big story, and I imagine this is gonna just be the big story for forever until somebody else does something that's worth reporting. In the same way that Activision Blizzard's layoff of 800 employees was going to be the big story forever until this happened. And sadly, I think the extremely expensive Season 1 pass of DOA 6 is not big enough to trump this story, but I'm not going to try and rant on this too much or get too deep in it. Gamasutra has kind of a follow-up article here. THQ Nordic Group CEO apologizes for perturbing 8chan AMA. THQ Nordic AB Chief Executive Lars Wingfors has apologized and taken full responsibility for the THQ Nordic GmbH's. I have no idea what General Manager BH recent AMA on the internet and blah blah blah. Despite the fact that THQ Nordic GmbH, a subsidiary of THQ Nordic AB. Let's see. So apparently, what you could take from this story, as I'm throwing out a bunch of nonsense letters, is that THQ has been growing and growing and growing, and apparently they've been breaking up their subsidiaries into sub-names with the main title of THQ Nordic. And you could potentially make an argument here that these subsidiary companies are just not under the same amount of control and the same amount of on the same page in general. That is one way you could take this. And so a subsidiary, not some unknown nobody subsidiary, but a subsidiary nonetheless, decided to do an AMA. It feels like, from what was being said, that they were totally the people who were in charge of advertising now, so it's not like a subsidiary tried to do some guerrilla advertising that was outside of their department. Let's see if there's anything. And I don't know if this seems like a new apology on top of the previous apology. Here's the quote. I take full responsibility for all THQ Nordic's GmbH's actions and communications. I spent the past several days conducting an internal investigation into the matter. I assure you that every member of the organization has learned from this past week's events, he wrote. So, I kind of have to applaud the idea of taking your time and not just doing a reactionary, well, that guy's fired, which is what reactionists, let's not even go any further than that. Let's just say that's what reactionist people always want in these scenarios, is that somebody actually lose their job, which firing a person is always the last option in any career path, and it shows that that person is not savable and cannot learn from their mistakes, which is not what you want. Like, particularly in professional environments, you've invested in that person, you've hired them, you've potentially got them on contract, so you'd have to pay out their whole contract. They may have a golden parachute if they're high in management. You just don't want to fire people flippantly, like reactionist people often call for. There's another quote here, quote, I take this matter very seriously and will take appropriate action to make sure we have the right policies and systems in place to avoid similar mistakes in the future. then there's that quote does not end on Gamma Sutra. They did not put in ending quotation marks. They just ended the paragraph, and then a new paragraph is, quote, "As a Swedish-based company, fast-growing group, we firmly support equality. They also support equity, but it says equality and diversity. We are working actively to combat discrimination, harassment, and misconduct. We are already in the process of developing new work processes and will accelerate this work going forward," end quote. Alright. So, that's what Gamma Sutra says. I will put my 2 cents into here, and I just think this is lesser of a story than it's being portrayed as. I feel like a significant amount of mainstream video game journalists, we talked about the THQ 8chan AMA, did not do any research at all. This is consistent with what we have seen with mainstream video game journalists. They simply read an article by WayForward's Patrick Klepek, who used to work for Giant Bomb, and that's where I know him from. But take note, he doesn't work for him now, so I suspect he was even too extreme for them even then. I think they read Patrick Klepek's article and did not even go to the AMA and look at it themselves. I think that there is an intentional ignorance being displayed here, either through laziness or malice, and I think some of it is straight malice. It is really, really easy to get into a junior high school mentality and just say that, say in your group of friends, in your clique, that somebody is stupid or mean or ugly, like, and that's really all that a lot of that feels like, is that all the game journalist people said AM8chan is this cesspool of hate speech and homophobia and brigading and child pornography, and none of that was there. As somebody who actually did the research and looked at the articles, there's just a bunch of trolls there. That's it. It's just like 4chan. It's just a bunch of trolls posting troll messages. And really all this comes down to, in my opinion, is this is mainstream video game journalism drawing a line saying we will not stop at any limit to discourage or slander any forum that supported Gamergate or didn't completely denounce it, or any forum that does not push a heavy, progressive, pro-censorship policy. Which is to say, if you are a video game company, and this is where THQ Nordic dropped the ball, is that they need to pretend like they are with the SJWs, as long as the SJWs run the journalist side. Or maybe they don't. Maybe that's what maybe THQ Nordic has learned, that actually we can have all the video game companies run their attack articles at us and it doesn't affect our bottom line at all. It's not unrealistic to believe that almost nobody looks at games reviews anymore from mainstream video games, but I think it's a little too early to do that. I think you're still getting a little bit of bad press, and you run the risk of something like this getting picked up by CNN or Fox News, and then you've got the parents and teachers who believe it, even though even though it's not really true. And I hate to use the fake news description, but it's kind of a fake news story. It really is. The way it was depicted. But for video game companies, I would suggest they should stick to Reddit or Reset Era, and only certain parts of Reddit too. And I'm not sure if there's really another place that you could do an AMA. You could do it on Facebook, you could do it on Twitter, but even doing it on Facebook or Twitter would potentially get a little bit of blowback, but you'd get away with it, Facebook or Twitter. But if you want to try and do an AMA anywhere else, I think you're going to get attacked. And particularly if it's a place that is not hyper censorship. You could probably do a live stream AMA on Twitch and YouTube. But yeah, this whole THQ Nordic on 8chan, it just to wrap up, it was a dumb move for THQ Nordic to do, unless they were testing the waters for something completely different. To say we're going to just blackball, like you would do this action if your next step was to say we are blackballing all mainstream video game journalists and we are only going directly to streamers and fans of our products. It's not particularly like THQ Nordic's games have been getting very well reviewed lately. That's in a lot of fault of their own, because their games haven't been particularly good. But yeah, Darksiders 3 not really getting a lot of coverage, and Darksiders 3 not reviewed very well. But you really would have to at this point say we're just not giving out press packs. We're not giving out any news to anybody whatsoever. And I don't think a big company can do that. I think you'd have to be a small indie company that never did it and just said, I never needed you for my success, and you never reviewed my games without me giving you free codes. So yeah, it's more of a fantasy than reality to say that they realize that people don't read reviews from a lot of these sites at all. It's also, I guess, a great example of just Gamergate has become like a religion or politics to particularly mainstream video game journalists. They're still talking about it years later when nobody cares. So, I mean, what can you really do about that? It's like, it's best that the video game companies just stay out of it and not mention it in a lot of ways. Yeah, and that's that story. If there's anything more to the story that's legitimate to talk about, I'll report upon it. But I suspect, and I don't know how accurate my guesses of what will happen in the future have been so far, but I heavily suspect that we will get a lot of people
Has become our greatest strength.
in games journalism trying to reference it back, trying to mention it again. We'll have people will be putting out articles about THQ Nordic doing this years from now. Meanwhile, THQ Nordic is just going to move on with its life and try and continue to be a giant, huge company that sells lots of games. So moving on, the other controversy of last week, I suppose. TechRaptor has a review for Devotion. It says Devotion review, nostalgia tinged with regret and tragedy. Let's jump to the bottom and see what TechRaptor has to say about this game that's not currently, I think, available. Well, interesting. This is, I believe, the second time I've seen a review this high on TechRaptor. They gave Devotion a 9.5 amazing. Says summary is Devotion is a story about a deeply personal tragedy made both more horrific and familiar with its carefully recreated 80s setting of a Taiwanese house that successfully draws on the feelings of nostalgia and its target audience. Well, not being Taiwanese might be a problem then to play the game, but I doubt it's too big of a problem. Alright, what do I want to do? Yeah, let's do this.
The eternal hunt has begun.
And then I'll end the turn there. So the pros are authentic 80s Taiwanese/Chinese atmosphere, professionally produced live action footage, excellent voice acting, uniquely visualized scenarios, especially effective for a Chinese audience. Now, it's worth mentioning the reason why Devotion is not available for sale is because one of the artists slipped in an insult to the Chinese president, and then either actual Chinese citizens with actual feelings reviewed it, bombed, and expressed their free speech, which they can't do in their own country, or a bunch of Chinese trolls that are paid by the government in the same way Russian trolls are mostly paid by the government, gone in there and review bombed it. So, and who knows, there's no way to tell the difference. Like, I can't look into the hearts and minds of the people who were review bombing. All I can say is some of their posts definitely seem to misconstrue an insult against the Chinese president as an insult to all of China, which I don't agree with as a valid argument. Wonder why we have this dust effect. What is causing this dust effect? The cons of the game were completed in 3 to 4 hours, a walking simulator gameplay, some scenarios don't fit well, and cultural context may be required. This was written by a staff writer named Samantha Oi, O-O-I, who I suspect is Taiwanese based on her picture, but I kind of don't have any way of knowing that. Let's see.
Bow to the fang and claw.
There we go. So here, we'll do a web peek here. So here's Samantha Oi, ex-game studio grunt, now freelance writer, flirting around, just Don't ask me about what I've seen. It says staff writer, so that means she's on staff. And there's 0 comments at this time on this article. Let's see, TechRaptor reviewed Devotion with a key from the developers. That's standard for TechRaptor and most mainstream video game journalists, which I'm not even sure TechRaptor falls into that. They talk about the controversy at the beginning paragraph. Oh, they're calling it Poogate, P-O-O-H, as in Winnie the Pooh. Interesting. So, take what you want from this. Either you trust TechRaptor to not put out a what would not be a hit piece, but the opposite of a hit piece, to help support a game that is getting unfairly reviewed bombed,
I must protect the
or unfairly rated based on, well, I don't know. See, that's the problem with reviews. Almost any review is valid in my mind. If you think the game is awful because of one piece of art that was slipped in, one Easter egg, how is that opinion any less valid than to say you think the game is awful because of a myriad of hundreds of glitches or hundreds of bugs? If it ruins the experience and you're not a satisfied customer, and particularly on Steam, you have to be a customer to review it, that is fine. Like, if you're willing to spend money to become a customer just to say you're not a satisfied customer, how is that wrong? So, yeah. Personally, on the screenshots that I'm seeing, and I guess we could just do full-on web peek here. This isn't much of a screenshot, sir, but this looks really cool. I've seen a few Taiwanese shows on Netflix, so I kind of have some nostalgia, particularly 80s Taiwanese era time. I think they're not too different, frankly, from Korean societies that I've seen in Korean TV shows. So it's not too hard to get into it and figure it out. Of course, I wouldn't have full nostalgia for any of this. I would argue, though, that this writer probably does have, and they're saying it in their own article, is that the reason why they are liking this game so much is because of their nostalgia and their history. It seems like.
Beetleberries, my favorite.
So yeah, I'd like to see more Taiwanese games come out, certainly, but there is also a point to be made that very few United States games, as somebody who's in the United States, very few United States games, and I grew up in the United States and I'm a United States citizen and all that. I don't know why I said it so oddly there. Let's see. I'm still saying it oddly. I was born in the United States. Gosh. Yeah. Anyways, very few United States games come out to a worldwide market and are raw General Washington, Abraham Lincoln. The United States was so good when it declared its independence, or the 80s or the 70s or the 60s were so good in the United States. Inherently, I think a lot of that has to do to be down to the fact that times for a lot of people were not good at any particular time frame in the United States. But by the time video games got made, and could be made by the time that technology existed. The idea of any kind of cowboys or Indians or highly hyper patriotic shows had gone. So most video games, with the exception of like Battlefield and Battlefront, no, not Battlefront, but Battlefield and Call of Duty, with the exception of those games that came very late and were really designed to focus on a kind of secondary new audience to video games, the gamer bros that Xbox, the original Xbox, brought into video games. Like, we were always kind of doing sci-fi, we were always doing fiction, we were always doing fantasy. I would say that I would like to see, from all countries, a similar style of experience happen. Like, I don't want to see too many instances of I don't want to see too many instances of games that are trying to lean on something that can't be related to, or that are set on the real world. Although we could use more of that, frankly, too. So what I'm trying to say very awkwardly here is games from Taiwanese developers saying Taiwan is so great are really no better than if a game from an American developer were to make a game saying that America is so great. It's jingoistic, it's nationalistic, it's silly and unbelievable, and not something I would like to see become a trend or anything.
Time's up. Let's do this.
And we see some of that, I suppose, on the other Asian styles of games too. Chinese games typically are doing the great Chinese 3 novels or whatever it is, where it's Romance of the Three Kingdoms or the Monkey King. Some Japanese games are trying to push that Japan is cool mentality. I think when you talk about a game like No More Heroes, that is a game that really is going for that anime Japan is cool mentality. It's just not actually the experience you would have if you were in Japan. Or every now and then you might see a visual novel that's romanticizing previous periods of Japanese history, but they don't do too much of that without also at least being somewhat honest about how the problems are too. So I guess this is inherently a problem of nostalgia, and nostalgia on the creator's part, and I can't blame a game developer for being nostalgic for what very well is their own past and their own history. But if you want to have worldwide appeal, it kind of has to be something that everybody can experience.
Beetleberries, my favorite.
Like, I think the game Gone Home is a great example of that. That was a game that I played that I had some relevance to when they're talking about old video games. That's something I can relate to, but there was a lot in that game that I don't have any experience with. I have never wandered around an old unfamiliar house that's three stories or 2 stories with a basement, and found a bunch of notes laying around talking about how my sister found out that she was gay, but she was potentially going to join the military. Like, that's not something that I have experienced, and yet I could still relate to it. And I think, for the most part, most people could relate to that, even if they're not from a Western country. That's a interesting thought, but also that was really, I don't even know if I want to call that one a rant as much as just thinking. Equal to its health, so I could take 10 damage, or I could draw a card. Let's start with that. I can't kill this guy in its current form. Draw 3 cards. Do that.
Sweet essence.
And we can do this.
Time waits for no one. The end has come.
Alright, moving on though, we got a lot of games to talk about. We've got Winter's Empty Mask visual novel. This one looks like it's maybe a Chinese visual novel with some kind of dungeon crawling aspects too. Looks like there's some bullying going on in the story. It's $14.99. Interesting, it's English and Latin American Spanish for 9 achievements. Like, why those languages? See, I can't really look at this and not see an Asian country. Like, I really don't see how this wasn't at least originally made by an Asian developer. But I suppose it's possible that you had all the artwork animated. No, because this thumbnail though also is very Asianish, and like a kimono, I think is what that's called. Yeah. So why English and Spanish? Interesting. I'll put this one on the fall list. I would say this art style is slightly rough, but not terrible by any means. Just a little lacking in sharp edges and details. Let's come back over here. Play this. And let's see. That. And do that. And
Ambrosia.
kill that. That. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Kikido Kintaro's Revenge. This looks like a straight up anime. Is this even a game? Oh, it is a game with just a like old 80s anime kind of intro. Like, look at this art style. This is the kind of anime nostalgia art style. It's not the moe. It's not just trying to. Even the eyes are kind of small compared to what they do. Yeah, this looks like a fighting beat 'em up game. $6.99. Lots of languages supported, discounted. I don't know of this developer or this publisher, and this looks old school. So this might be a callback to old school games, or this might be a re-release. It says a timeless classic as its description. I don't know if that's true or not. So this is a game I'd have to put on the follow list and probably do a little bit of research on to see, did somebody make an old school arcade beat 'em up, and is that something I would want to play, considering how I haven't gotten around to covering any of the real old school beat 'em ups, or is this a remaster re-release? But yeah, that definitely deserves to be on the follow list, which normally when we look at these games, it's pretty easy to say, that's garbage, that's garbage, that's garbage. But so far we've had a pretty good look at like 3 games. Next we have a game on Steam called Matchy Gotchi Z, which I assume is a match 3 game of some sort. There's a lot of buttons happening here. It says it's a simulation game. Like, I cannot... This is all cartoony in the trailer. It's a colorful digital pet game. Early access, $4.79 discounted, English only. I don't think this needs to be on the follow list because it's early access. I think immediately you lose my attention then. Like, if you're making a digital pet game, there's no reason to not say have an initial release, and if you decide to add more content to a digital pet game a year later, which is probably a good idea, you put that out as DLC or a free update or something like that. You don't say 6 months to a year later that now it's finally out of early access and this is the real game we always intended it to be. Digital pet games in particular, like I'm playing Kleptocats 1 and 2, and that's kind of a digital pet game, although it's kind of silly too, and they put out updates for that, at least Kleptocats 2, every 6 months or so. So, yeah, if they told me Kleptocats 2 was an early access, I would take offense to that, quite frankly. TechRaptor has an article, When the Darkness Comes review, Meaningful Meaninglessness, or not lessness, but meaningless. I'll scroll down and see what review they gave. TechRaptor really is the only game that it's the only company in town anymore that I'm actually looking at any review scores for, and I'm probably wrong to even do that. It might save me a little bit of time. I've been giving a little thought to things that might save some time, and a little bit less personal goofing around on YouTube in particular would probably save me a lot more time to do more work, but it's always a delicate balance. Do I want to work myself to death and make myself miserable, or do I want to stay informed and have fun with life? Anyways, When the Darkness Comes got a 9.0, amazing, so maybe TechRaptor has just decided to give everything really high scores lately. When the Darkness Comes is a surprisingly smart horror game that manages to blend in the introspective narrative elements seamlessly. Prose, great story, neat meta elements, lovely scenes, scary cons, occasional gameplay blunders. And this is from a different reviewer, Samuel Golimo, who is an associate review editor. Interesting. I wonder why a review editor. He's got the wrong title to be reviewing a game, quite frankly. If you're a review editor, you shouldn't be reviewing games. Let's see. When the Darkness Comes is apparently on Steam for free? when I Google it, it's like the 4th link because there's a song called When the Darkness Comes. Well, what did I just do? I just closed it accidentally. Oh, I see. It is on it's a link I already had opened. So that's the problem. So we can just talk about this right now. So When the Darkness Comes is a game on Steam. It looks frankly like something I could easily skip over and just go, oh, this is not something I'm interested in playing. So it's free, which means what? I guess I can put it on the fall list and maybe cover it at some point. There's no microtransactions labeled here or anything. There's no donation DLC. I would like, frankly, to see more Kickstarter games come out on Steam for free after a certain level. Like, I don't know if people really would be cool with that, but there's a lot of bad games that get made through Kickstarter or through real support of real fans, but then try to sell themselves and double dip. So it depends how much of an artist you want to be and how much you care about your art being seen. This is just tagged as a walking simulator game. But yeah, I'll put that on the fall list, I suppose, and well, and if I ever decide to play some more free games, or if I need some more games free. Oh, I should mention I did get the Neptunia Humble Bundle for $12, which was kind of expensive, but not too much for all those Neptunia games, which are a little bit niche. There is a bit of a trap in there, though. You get the DLC for Four Goddesses Online, or something like the game, something like that. It's like in the first tier, so you always get the DLC, but you don't get the base game. So you would then either have to go to the Humble store that had it for sale for another $3 to buy the game, and I was like, after spending $12 on that, I'm not willing to go that extra distance. Let's see, 369 plus 5 is 14. Let's just play some cards before we win. So yeah, so now I have this Steam code for DLC that I can't activate because I don't own the base game, which kind of sucks, but whatever, you know. It was still a pretty good deal for a niche adult JRPG series. A lot of games in that series. There's still like 3 Neptunia games on my wish list that weren't in that bundle, but that removed a lot of things from the wish list that have frankly just been things that I've had to skip over many times, or just talk about over and over again. And there is this desire in me to want to get most of the games to cycle off the wish list, because I don't think at the end of this year, but the end of next year, so December 2020, I'll probably need to do another video where I do a wishlist cleanup, and if I'm doing another series of videos where I'm doing wishlist cleanup and talking about the same games that I talked about 2 years previously, that's going to be repetitive, but not too repetitive, quite frankly. I think most people would have forgotten by then. But there is a certain point there too where I don't want to have all the adult games just always on the wish list. Because I'd like to actually support the adult game creators and not look like a big old perv. I just want to look like a medium perv. Speaking of pervs, I think this is family friendly. At least this screenshot. Galgun Pixies is coming to the West for the Switch and PC in 2019. P-Cube again is handling the publishing duties. P-Cube is a weird choice. So it's rather surprising, but not. I mean, if it was 10 years earlier, this would be jaw-dropping. Surprising that a Galgun game would be coming to the Switch, but you know, the Switch has really embraced like all comers as far as adult games, even in the West. So there's a trailer here. I'll look at it. Because you're playing this at least on the Switch with the Joy-Cons, I imagine since it's an on-rail shooter series, you're gonna be dual shooting. Two different guns, a bunch of anime characters that have been infected by, well, I think the series is that their little anime demons have taken over the hearts of some of the girls, the anime girls. Although in this game it seems like instead of being just run and attacked by a random group of schoolgirls that are running towards you, this seems like this is much more focused on very specific characters.
Time waits for no one.
And the trailer seems to be implying you're going to have smaller experiences where you're shooting your love gun at them, and one of them was the sniper section. One of the things in the trailer, there was a girl in the bathtub and she was covered up by bubbles. So this might not be as much an on-rail shooter as it is something closer to a sniper game where you're going to target and shoot the same person multiple times. Yeah, they're describing it the crazy Japanese third-person shooter and 3D platformer in one sends two tiny girls from outer space to Earth so that if they can infiltrate a woman's college dormitory, so they've moved it from high school to college. Once arrived, the pixies stealthily bustle about the regularly sized girls' towering legs in rooms to fulfill their mission, studying human behavior in order to overcome the social issues of their beloved home planet.
That's incredible.
So the only thing that seems to be staying from the original story is the general idea of like it really does seem like it's just the general idea of shooting anime girls, and everything else seems like it's been changed. Okay, well, Galgun as a series, Galgun 1 and Galgun 2, and then there was some other console slight modifications that were released, hasn't been extremely reviewed So I'm not sure how good the on-rail shooter is, element of it is, but clearly it's selling well enough to its target audience. Like, having just played the Star Wars on-rail shooter games from 1993, I would be happy to find an on-rail shooter game on Steam that is actually good, but I don't know what would be a good choice there, because you have like Typing of the Dead, which is a conversion of an on-rail shooter to a typing game, but can you play House of the Dead? Can you play some of those classic light gun games from arcades?
Let the hunt begin. Bring it on.
Or is there an on-rail shooter that is newer that would make sense and potentially be a little bit more family friendly for YouTube than Galgun Pixies would be, or the Galgun series? I definitely want to own and play the Galgun series, but I don't know how I would present it, frankly. And they are a series that also has a ton of DLC, so it's pretty easy to get ripped off there too. And some of the DLC in one of the Galgun games I think are contradictory. So you buy one and then you undo the effect of a previous one you bought, which seems like it shouldn't even be allowed to do that on Steam. This story from Gematsu is surprising. Friday the 13th, the game is coming to the Switch this spring. This is very surprising in a couple of ways. One, Friday the 13th, the game is not really getting played very much. I imagine its player base is actually incredibly small. We could actually click on their page and see about that. See what the player base is. But the more surprising thing here is they said, and this felt like a lie even at the time, but they swore up and down because there was a conflicting claims on who owned the rights to the Friday the 13th name and trademark, that they could no longer sell or work on Friday the 13th the game. And they basically abandoned it, and it wasn't even really finished. Well, at least that's what they were saying. Apparently there was a patch hit on January 30th. So what they said probably was just a straight up lie. It seems like I've lost the plugin that tells me how many people are playing online though, because I don't see that anymore. They must have shut down that plugin or that site that it was pulling that information from. That being said, one thing I could say is right now this game is 67% positive and it's overall only 70% positive. So in the last 30 days it's been 67% positive for a Friday the 13th game. And I'm watching a trailer as Jason Voorhees is sticking a lady's head in the toilet.
I can't do that.
Trying to drown her. Like, these murder cutscenes are kind of all that is even slightly interesting of the Friday the 13th game. Its asymmetric gameplay is not good. So yeah, I don't know how you can justify releasing Friday the 13th the game on Switch. I don't see how you think you're gonna grow your audience or get a lot of sales there. I don't even think you make back your money on that. As just an armchair video game critic and economist, that's how it's said. My suspicion is the development cost you would put in to make a Switch version would not get recouped at this point. This game came out on May 26, 2017. Yeah. The only thing I could maybe guess is that during the Kickstarter for this game, they promised a Switch version or a Wii U version, even possibly, and then they backed down on that version, but they had already done a lot of work on that. So, or perhaps their lawyers are telling them they are in legal jeopardy if they don't release the Switch version, so they're going to release just like a garbage version because of that. I mean, that could be it too. Because if they made an actual promise, they could get sued otherwise. And this is definitely not something I've seen anybody mention. By the way, Friday the 13th on Steam is $19.99 right now, but then if you were to buy all of the DLC, you're putting another $14.94 in it. So you'd be paying about $45 for a game. I'm not even sure this game is worth $10 though. The fact that there really isn't a single player experience here is what kills you. Like, it's hard to make that justification.
Job's done.
Let's see, misdirection. Maybe the port was just really easy. It's a strange announcement, but I guess it's kind of a day for strange announcements in general. So, just keep playing. I wonder if this, I mean, this wouldn't do anything, would it? Komatsu has another article. Trine 4, The Nightmare Prince, launches this fall alongside a Trine Ultimate Collection. Both titles available physically and digitally. So, in an effort, I suppose, to just move forward quickly and forget about the mess that was Trine 3, they've made a Trine 4. Apparently Trine 4 is going to be $30, whereas the Ultimate Collection will be $50. Trine 1 and 2 are kind of still liked, so not probably a bad idea to think about getting the Ultimate Collection. Of course, I also wouldn't be surprised if they were to make a Trine 5, so I'm not sure if this is the time. Let's see what this does. There we go. Yep. It wasn't but maybe 6 months ago that Trine 3 came out. But yeah, that was a mistake to release such a bad game, and there's definitely, I think, a legitimate reason to question whether Frozen Byte, the creators of Trine, are going to be financially stable and make it through 2019. I've already pretty much estimated that 2019 will be the year of a lot of layoffs and bankruptcies and such. Let's see.
I hunt alone. Job's done.
It's got me down to 1 health. TechRaptor has an article. Dissidia NT Free Edition is coming to the PS4 and PC. Dissidia is the Final Fantasy online game. So, yeah. I don't know if there's really a lot to say there. Other than, yeah, Square Enix is losing its fan base, so it needs to try and gain it back. We still need to get a victory with a Shaman and Warlock, or you know what, I could wait until Wednesday and see if I can re-roll that for some more gold. We just really need to get one more Druid or Hunter victory. And let's see. We're at about an hour and a half. Let's go one more game and let's see if we can do this, and if we can't, we'll break up the recording there.
Malfurion versus Lunara.
I must protect the wild.
TechRaptor has another article. The Occupation Review Press Trespass. This is a game I don't think I've heard about, so it may be not out yet. Let's see. The last paragraph I happen to see here says The Occupation is the second title by White Paper Games, followed by the somewhat underrated game Myst-like game Ether 1. I love Myst, so Ether 1 is something that interests me. Both games are ingenious and compelling, blah 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 blah. I don't know, is TechRaptor just taking on a very positive attitude this week? Because they gave this game also a 9.5 out of amazing. Summary: The Occupation is a taut investigation simulation and stealth thriller. It's infused with realistic and multi-dimensional approach to mechanic systems and level design. This is a must-play for fans of Deus Ex or Dishonored. I liked both of those games, so that sounds like something I want to try. It is on Steam. Alright. Let's see. The pros are astoundingly detailed art direction. What can I do? Just in the turn there. Complex and interlinked systems, brainy convoluted narrative, immersive atmosphere and setting, multi-dimensional level design. When they say multi-dimensional level design, does that mean you go into different dimensions, or does that mean it's just verticality instead of a flat plane? What am I trying to do here? Draw a card. Just draw a card, give me something to play. And give me some armor. I think I'm at the max. I have just like the worst collection of cards here. And then a pro is original interactive mechanics. The cons are somewhat clunky controls, and it gets easier as you progress. This is definitely an example of a game that I would have missed. This game called The Occupation. It did not... The links I'm clicking on are taking me to the Humble store for Ether 1 and The Occupation. But unless it's a game... Well, it says it's coming soon, so maybe I wouldn't have missed it, come to think of it. Alright. Empty mana crystal. and this. And then in the turn. Moving on, we have an article, Tech Raptor has an article, a Alpha Black Lotus auction sells for $160,000, breaking the previous record by nearly double. So, okay. This isn't video game related per se. The Black Lotus Magic the Gathering cards are like the most expensive cards, I think, ever, if they're the Alpha series. But it does kind of go to show the insanity and the insane price that you might get if you have something that is a first series, probably mint condition item. But it also has to be very rare, and it has to be something that was not really thought to be a collectible, even though Magic the Gathering is a collectible card game. Nobody really thought that those cards would be rare in any way, since they were printing so many copies of them. And it was just a kid's game. For every story of great success like that, there are billions of stories of Alpha Generation land cards, I'm sure, that aren't worth anything. Okay. What can I do? Let's do this. And then do this. Next we have a game on Steam called Tetralogic, which seems like it's a number matching game of some sort. I'm not really getting it. It almost looks like a paint by number game, or it's like a match 3 game. Seems like it's half Tetris and half fill in paint by number. Let's see. See if we can find the video and see an explanation on how this plays. Alright. Cunning game. Let's see. Place your Tetra pieces well to get the best score. Play against the clock, human, or other components. So you're eating away at this with Tetra pieces, apparently. Let's see, gain 2 mana crystals.
Sweet essence.
Draw all 3 cards.
Time waits for no one.
Tetralogic is early access and $4.99 with English only as its list.
You know, take candle.
Yeah, so not a game I think that needs to be on the fall list. Speaking of nothing really, I'm gonna have to wrap up this pretty fast and then take a break. So let's wrap up this game and just focus here. I may have to just concede because I don't think I'm gonna win here. Yeah, let's just concede. Nature calls. Literally. Like I have nothing else to do, and I could drag this out, but This feels like it's slightly playable, but I don't think really is. So I'm just going to concede here.
I concede.
And that means we'll go back to the idle screen, which is not enabled, so I'll have to click that myself, and then people can chat on the chat if they want to. That's it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.